You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. We might have to get some like soap opera music to accompany this. It feels like another installment of As the Transfer Portal Turns. Keeping an eye on LSU's search for a defensive tackle. And we've run through this a good bit already, but another day has brought another target for LSU in the transfer portal. So Friday, Pete Nakos from On3 tweeted that LSU is among the teams in the mix for a defensive tackle prospect out of Michigan State. Now, this is a little bit of a winding path, but his name is Brandon Lane. And Brandon Lane started his college career in North Dakota and then went to Stephen F. Austin and had announced a transfer to Michigan State, and then a week ago decommitted from Michigan State, now back in the portal. And he has had some big boy offers. And I say this often, and I'm not saying that this is the only thing that matters, but by and large, one of the things that I do pay attention to when you're looking at recruits and prospects and different things like that is, okay, well, who else is interested? Like, if you're LSU and you're in the mix with, I don't know, Tulsa, and Vandy's the one Power 5, and it's a bunch of G5s, maybe I'm wrong for that, but I'm going to judge a book by its cover. If you have offers from the big boys in college football, and that's the battle you're fighting, then yeah, I'm going to be a little more interested. So Brandon Lane, just as a quick thumbnail here, again, Stephen F. Austin. Interestingly, they've got him listed, and I think this was his high school profile. They got him listed at 6'5", 265 at On3. But I've seen, and that was back in 2020, I've seen his profile above 300 pounds. So you're looking like at a big physical interior defensive lineman, a run stuffer, a space eater, who might be a target. By the way, out of Lee Summit, Missouri. Wasn't there another guy yesterday we talked about from Lee Summit, Missouri? There was somebody in around the SEC. Wasn't there? We did this yesterday.
Yeah, but I can't remember who it was because we went through Lang and the Finnegans and...
Yeah. How about Lee Summit? Who knew that was such a little hotbed of talent, huh?
Thriving athletic community.
At least as it points toward Baton Rouge, anyway. Yeah. Is Lee Summit like in the greater St. Louis area?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, that would make sense if it's like a suburb of a major metropolitan area. But anyway, yeah, Lee Summit. Who knew? I'm going to repeat again. Yeah?
Kansas City.
Okay.
Suburb of Kansas City by Overland Park.
Ashton Larson over there. How about
Ashton Larson.
How about that? Well, Kansas City's a big area.
It is.
I get that.
It's in 2 states.
It is. So my sister lives in Kansas City, Kansas. Technically Overland Park.
Right.
But yes, but on the where Ashton Larson.
Yeah, Lee Summit is like adjacent to Overland Park, but in Missouri.
Well, this was a fun little geography
How about that,
lesson.
man?
We're learning stuff
here. There's a test later, so everybody better take a notes.
There won't be a test. Let's talk about Brandon Lane instead of having a test. How about that? A good idea? They can't see you shrug your shoulders.
I like that. Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Eventually, I won't have to say they can't see you shrug your shoulders. But maybe not, Muse. How about this? So last year, 44 tackles, 1.5 sacks, not a 6.5 TFLs. So not a guy that totally stuffed the stat sheet. And for what it's worth, I think this feels like another body. And I keep looking at LSU's target of a defensive lineman. And now I can't help but wonder, are you targeting a defensive lineman just for the sake of targeting a defensive lineman? Maybe Brandon Lane could come in. Look, this is a guy, as we just mentioned, was committed to Michigan State, and he has some other big-time offers. That was the point that I was getting to, if you'll forgive me, before I got derailed a little bit with the Lee Summit tangent. But LSU, USC, Colorado, NC State among those that have been interested. Mentioned he had been committed to Michigan State, now decommitted. So he's got P5 interest. But the real question is, are we talking about a guy that would come to LSU and is a better option than the guys you already have? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So 2 years of eligibility remaining. And Brandon Lane is another guy that you could throw into the mix as LSU is targeting there in the transfer portal. You know, Brian Kelly did a couple of interviews this week with Jacques Doucet and with Michael Cobble, and obviously we've had a lot of conversations about the NIL portion of that. When Kelly did his interview with Cobble, Cobble asked him the question if he painted himself into a corner. It's one of the things that I've wondered. Like, when Brian Kelly said point blank, the only position we'd be targeting in the portal is defensive tackle, or we need to go get another defensive tackle, it made it feel like a must. And while that might be your biggest need, a starting caliber player is one thing, but just adding a player to add a player feels entirely different. Here was Kelly's answer to that.
No, because I think the spring puts you in that position. Yeah. We were really much more interested in managing our roster first and then looking at the defensive tackle position. Now, we're not done at the defensive tackle position. We're going to continue to recruit. We still think that there's some players out there that warrant bringing to campus, and we're going to be doing that over the next couple of days and the next probably week. But I think you have to understand that the spring portal is not about going out and finding players as much as it is making sure that you get your roster set. December and January is really where you're trying to build your roster because everybody's doing it at that time. So everybody's got an eye towards a particular player. If you're looking for a particular guy in March and April, you better get the Brinks truck rolled up to the building.
He's right. He's right. Like, that's the problem, right? So can we all agree in this cycle there were two, maybe three, if you want to include Philip Bleedy, three really elite defensive tackle prospects. You had Dominic Williams, you had Simeon Barrow, Philip Bleedy. Like, you had those three. Well, everybody that needed a defensive tackle were going after those three, which drove the market up. He's right. And he says the time to do that is in December, January. Okay, why didn't you do it then? Right? Like, at that point, you knew that you were losing Jefferson and Smith and Wingo. So when you're talking about like roster maintenance and roster management, yeah, I agree with you. Like, you shouldn't be frantically trying to fill a spot in May because the pool that you're fishing in is pretty shallow. And if there is a big fish, everyone's going after it. The time to do it is then. Well, you didn't do it then. And that's the problem that's the conundrum that you find yourself in now, that you feel a little desperate. And I'm going to continue to say this. And maybe this is something where we clip it and come back at the end of the year, but it feels like any player you add right now, I would be more inclined to think Jalen Lee, Sean Washington, Demyron Johnson, Dominic McKinley, Gio Paez, that group, I'd be more inclined to think that group of players would outperform anyone you'd sign at this point if it wasn't a plug-and-play starter like Williams or Barrow, the guys we just mentioned. So, look, they're going to keep targeting interior defensive linemen. Clearly, they feel like it's a need. The spring revealed that. I don't know that any of the guys we're talking about are better options than the ones you have. So it feels like the best option is go coach up the ones you have. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.